Today, we bring you a story about ATF being extra tyrannical and what we're doing about it. It starts with the paperwork filing, specifically the filing of an ATF Form 1, the application to make and register a firearm regulated by the National Firearms Act. One of our members submitted this form into the ATF, but was disapproved. In other words, denied. The reason? Our member stated that he wanted to exercise his God-given rights. You can't make this stuff up, unfortunately. Stay tuned and I'll explain everything. Hi, I'm Ben, and you're watching the Minuteman Moment. Today's video involves the ATF and their tyrannical enforcement of the 1934 National Firearms Act. Currently, GOA is suing to overturn the NFA registration regulations on short-barrel rifles, short-barrel shotguns, AOWs, and silencers. Help us win this fight to restore the Second Amendment, so donate today and become a member at gunowners.org. Okay, now back to the video. Imagine this. You want to make a short-barreled shotgun and a suppressor for some extra fun at your next range day with your buddies. So you start with your Form 1 paperwork process with the ATF. While you're filling out your form, you notice an unusual question, specifically question 4I, which reads, specify why you intend to make a firearm. Now, this information isn't demanded by any statute, and it's not contained in any federal regulation. Instead, it's a product of ATF's own creation. But if you want your Form 1 approved, you have to answer it. So like any good law-abiding American citizen, you know you have Second Amendment rights. You don't need a reason. In fact, in our NFA litigation, ATF expressly conceded that NFA firearms are arms under the Second Amendment, meaning Americans have a right to own them. But ATF's questions demands an answer, so you write in that you want to make these NFA firearms to exercise my God-given rights. You send the form off to ATF for approval. You wait, and you get your answer. Disapproved. But why? Well, as it turns out, ATF apparently doesn't consider the exercise of God-given rights to be an acceptable reason to exercise your God-given rights. Now, this isn't some imaginary situation. It actually happened to a GOA member very recently. In fact, the form itself was filed on January 3rd, 2026, just 2 days after the tax stamp price was reduced to $0, thanks to President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill. But much to our disappointment with the Senate parliamentarian, the registration requirements for the NFA remained in place. This is just another reason why the NFA needs to be abolished, along with the ATF themselves. And that's why we're suing the ATF in the Northern District of Texas to accomplish just that. But the government has now just contradicted itself. In both our One Big Beautiful lawsuit against the NFA and the recent case, United States v. Peterson, which viewers of this channel may be familiar with, the U.S. government argued that the National Firearms Act registration requirements only create a modest burden on the Second Amendment. In using this pseudo-interest balancing language, the government compared the NFA's registration requirements to the shall-issue concealed carry licensing systems in place throughout the states. But here's the thing. The NFA is not a shall-issue system. Rather, ATF's enforcement is more akin to a may-issue system, where the government has a subjective say on why they will or will not approve your application. And with the ATF's denial of this GOA member's Form 1 application, they've proved that the NFA's registration process is hugely subjective. How is the desire to exercise one's God-given rights an insufficient justification to exercise one's God-given rights? I wonder if ATF can answer that question. They soon may have to, because our lawyers just submitted ATF's Form 1 denials in a court filing, letting our judge know about ATF's recent shenanigans. In our notice of supplemental authority, our lawyers highlighted how the government has been contradicting itself in an effort to keep gun control on the books. Defendants have claimed that the National Firearms Act survives Second Amendment review because it is supposedly, presumptively lawful, shall-issue licensing scheme of the sort discussed in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. Plaintiffs dispute that characterization. Now, recently issued Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosive documents further belie the notion that the NFA is a shall-issue licensing scheme. Recently, ATF disapproved 2 applications to make and register a firearm submitted by a member of plaintiff Gun Owners of America. ATF denied both applications due to the GOA member's response to Box 4I. Specifically, Box 4I requires, without any statutory or regulatory backing, an applicant to specify why you intend to make firearm. There are no instructions on Form 1 with respect to what sorts of reasons are considered legitimate or illegitimate. Nevertheless, on both Form 1 applications, this GOA member stated that they desired to exercise my God-given right, and in both cases, ATF disapproved the Form 1, asserting that the applicant had provided an insufficient reason. This was the only ground for disapproval on both forms. Then, when this GOA member followed up with ATF by email asking, please provide me with a complete list of acceptable reasons to ATF to make a firearm because my reason is obviously not what the examiner wanted to read, ATF doubled down, stating that Box 4I needs a clear legal reason why you are manufacturing the weapon. ATF's denial of this GOA member's application bears no resemblance to the shall-issue schemes discussed in Bruin. So there you have it. With this update to our One Big Beautiful lawsuit, we're continuing the fight against the ATF's tyrannical enforcement of the NFA's registration requirements. If you'd like to support us in our fight, please head over to gunowners.org/donate. And if you're not already a member, please consider becoming one, so that we can fight on your behalf if you've ever been denied your Second Amendment rights. Now thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with GOA's latest fights for your rights.